All right. Welcome to No Fences. My name is Mike Siver, and I have as my very special guest tonight, Earnest. And we're going to talk about no fences in a childhood setting and how we coped with those issues and how they maybe became fences or not fences for the rest of our lives.
Okay.
And this is going to be a 10-minute segment, so we're going to try and stay focused and get this done.
Yes, sir.
When I was growing up, my dad was an alcoholic, and my mom ran away from my dad a lot. We moved a lot, even state to state.
Okay.
A lot of times, 4 or 5 times in a year. This went on for a couple of years. I learned very quickly that I didn't have to pay attention in school. I didn't have to learn anything because I was always the new kid on the block. Teachers took care of me. They prompted me along because I might have been behind or ahead of what they were doing. And they allowed me some slips during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I also knew I didn't have to have friends because as soon as I made them, we were going to move.
Right.
And that happened over and over and over and over.
Okay.
And that carried on as an obstacle in my life. I had trouble attaching, making friends, because I knew I was going to lose them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a horrible thing, and I think back on it, for me to have, and my sisters were the same,
Okay.
and how we grew up in that environment. Luckily, my sisters had 4 of them, and I was the only boy.
Okay.
So they had each other.
Right.
I didn't have any other males in my life.
Right. Right.
So that was a fence that I had that stopped me from growing and accepting responsibility and sticking things out, seeing things through, because I never had to,
Right.
because I was always gone.
Okay.
And I don't know if you had issues or incidences like that in your life growing up.
Well, I did. I had a good extended family. My mother's siblings and her mother and father always made sure that all of their grandchildren basically were taken care of. But my father was not around. He was not involved. He lived less than 2 blocks away and spent no time with us. His time was always dedicated to somewhere else.
Right.
And I can remember at the time, what they call social services now was called ADC. And the joke in the neighborhood was after daddy cut out. But
Some truth in that.
yes, it was.
Yeah.
And I grew up with, I had my uncles. I had 7, 8 uncles that always looked out for me. And I had a very good extended family. So I miss my dad, but in terms of spiritual growth, mental growth, my uncles made sure I had that. I used to tell my kids all the time that my mother taught me how to be a parent. My uncles taught me how to be a man. My cousins taught me how to be an athlete, but nobody taught me how to be a father. It was on the job training for me.
Yep.
But even though my family had a little money, we had to work. I've told you about the snow shovel.
Yeah,
I won't go
yeah.
into that. So it was, even though I had these obstacles, the other people in my family made a way for me to go around that. And even real quickly, when my father passed, when I found out that he had cancer, when I was 6 months old, they told me he'd have 6 months to live. So he spent the rest of his life looking out for himself and nothing else.
Wow. And we don't know and we don't understand how that impacts our lives as children.
Right.
We deal with it.
Uh-huh.
We move on. We have to.
Right.
You get into trouble or you don't get into trouble or whatever you do as a young person, male or female, growing up. It's like you. I had no idea
Uh-huh.
how to be a man or how to be a father. That was the furthest thing I had any idea of.
Right.
But I grew up in a house with 4 sisters and a mother. And it was years and years and years when I was in my 30s and 40s where I would not be comfortable in a group of men
Okay.
because I didn't know how to act.
Right. Right.
I didn't know what was a joke, what was not a joke, how to start a joke, how to interact, how you should respond. I didn't have any idea. And it wasn't until later on when I talked with a guy and told him this, as one of my friends, and he said, look, we don't know all that. We know there's something different about you, but you don't seem to be friendly enough, and you're always reserved,
Right. Right.
because I didn't know what to say.
Got it.
I didn't know if I should laugh in that spot or not, or,
Right.
I mean, if it was a joke, it was a joke.
Right, I understand.
But I didn't know how to do that. And as far as being a father, I didn't have a clue.
Yeah, when my children started coming to live with me, my oldest daughter was then 12 or 13. And I had to go from being this single man, actually just getting into recovery, having about 7 months clean, and this child's showing up in my life. And it was new to me. It was really new to me. I had to call my mom a lot. I had to call my sister a lot. I had no clue what to do. I could remember real quickly, her mother called me right before she gave her custody to me. She was down in Ben Harbor. So she told me she was having sex, which wasn't true, but that's what the mother thought. So I go and I pick up my daughter, and, I'm trying to stay within these boundaries of a young lady, but, tell her sexual diseases or all these things, like you said, about how I had a fence around me. I didn't know how to do it. So I take her out to get ice cream. Long story short, we talk about 15, 20 minutes, and she's like, "What are you talking about?" "Well, your mother said this." "Well, I'm not." She said, "Mother never explained to me that after I had a cycle, that if I kissed a boy, I couldn't get pregnant." And that's what she thought. If she kissed a boy, once she started having her cycle, that she could get pregnant.
Oh, wow.
So it took me a while, and then I got all of the children eventually. But, and like you said earlier, there's no similarities in how I grew up and how you grew up. I mean, we grew up, and let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
The similarities between our age group and how we grew up. How the younger kids are growing up today, there's no similarity.
No.
Me and
no.
you had similar similarities. Our
Yeah.
parents demanded this, our grandparents demanded this. This is how it was back then. Neighbors were neighbors, and they helped you.
Well, it's all about, this whole show, and the series of shows are going to be about no fences, and how we unconsciously or consciously, as individuals, or how parents in the environment you grow up in builds these fences around you.
Right.
And even, I told you about not having to worry about responsibility because I knew we were going to be gone soon.
Mm-hmm.
I've even had a co-worker, a friend of mine who I respected, come and told me, you ever hang around more than 3 years, what are you going to do?
Right.
Because after 3 years, I'm done.
Right.
I'm ready to go. It don't matter, even as an adult. After 3 years, I get restless. I want to move on, and I can't figure out why. I've been in the same house now for 5 years, and sometimes it drives me nuts.
Right.
And that's a fence that's built around me that I've always got something new all the time. Now that's nice to have, an adventurous spirit, but at the same time, when are you going to learn to relax? And when can you accept stuff? Now it's taken me many, many years to come to terms with that.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like I said, I'm not knowing how to be a man. I just fake it now until you make it, sort of
Right.
thing. That's all you can do. And, we're of the same age, so we have similar
Mm-hmm.
histories as far as that goes. And we'll get into our personal stuff a little bit later on in
Right,
another
right.
couple of shows down the road. But there's got to be some huge fences. Like I said before, we were in poverty when I grew up.
Right.
My mom lived on social state, the welfare state.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan was known as a welfare state when I was a kid.
Okay.
It might still be, I don't know. But we lived, everything was paid for. I got hand-me-down clothes, hand-me-down shoes, haircuts every month by the local barber came around for free and cut everybody's hair.
Right.
And that's a stigma when you're poor. And we were considered, I don't think we were poor white trash, but we were close to it back in those days. We got a minute left on this segment. Before we go any further, and we're going to do another show right away after this one, I want to encourage anyone who wants to talk about this topic of no fences, and how fences were built up around you, or how you built fences through your own understanding or misunderstanding about what was going on around you when you were younger. Whether you were called dumb, stupid, or fat in school, how that built a fence around you, and it became an issue for you to get over as you were growing up. And Ernest has got some stuff to go over, and we got about 30 seconds left.
Well, I'll wait till the next show, and what you just said,